everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue, an emergency breaking news session. It's just me for this one because Soar is sick. Apparently, his tonsils are like golf balls, so it's just going to be me on this today, but hopefully he'll join us in the chat. Leo Campana traded to the New England Revolution. It's been a big day for Inter Miami fans. We found out about the schedule. Franco Negri has moved on to San Diego FC. They picked him up in the re-entry process. But beyond that, and the biggest news, and that's why we're going live, is Campana has been traded to the New England Revolution. It's for $2.5 million in total allocation money, $2 million in 2025, $500,000 in 2026. There's up to $750,000 more in potential future allocation money based on how Campana performs in New England. And there's also a sell-on fee. We did pay a couple $1 million for Campana a couple years ago when we first brought him in. And so if New England does move him on, sells him to Europe or South America or whatever, Inter Miami will get a fee, a transfer fee for that in the future. But really, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, guys, because this is a player that I very much love to have. He was a guy that I could have seen being a part of Inter Miami for the next 5+ years if he became the guy after Suarez left. And now that's not going to happen. And so we're going to talk about all of it. What did they get? Campana's career at Miami, why he was traded. What does this mean for other players on the roster? What does this mean for the striker position, team depth, the front office, etc. But again, I really just want to hear from you guys. So that's what I wanted to do. So let's start with Vaishnav, who said Vaishnav. Apologize if I mispronounced that. He says good news, but then we get such a sad and huge loss for us. I wish him the best of luck in New England. Hash says an overhaul is coming, it seems. Skrilla says Drake is next. AZ says it's a huge haul, a new young forward coming in. That's all possible. And so I want to hear your thoughts. I know that Campana has mixed reactions from the fan base. Some people didn't love his final output. It didn't feel like he consistently dominated games, and I can understand why people think that way. I also don't think he was ever given too much of an opportunity to be the number one striker. Obviously, when he first came in, he was given that first half of 2022 to be the guy, but by the second half, Gonzalo Higuain took over and rightfully deserved that spot. 2023, he split time with Joseph Martinez, and those two sort of battled it out. It felt to me like Campana won every single time, but every new coach that came in sort of went back to Joseph Martinez, and Campana had to beat him out again. That's sort of how I felt. So early in 2023, Campana is hurt for the first couple games. Joseph Martinez gets to start, and eventually Campana seems like he takes over. And then Phil Neville gets fired. Javier Morales takes over. He goes back to Joseph Martinez. And again, Campana is relegated to sort of that second spot. And then when Tata Martino came in, same thing. And that one made sense because of the history that Tata Martino had with Joseph Martinez. But even by the end of the Leagues Cup that year, it felt like, or rather just after the Leagues Cup, it felt like Campana had sort of retaken that number one role for much of the rest of 2023. And then going into this year, obviously we signed Luis Suarez. And so there was no doubt that Campana was going to be second fiddle. We even heard Tata Martino say in the preseason that he doesn't generally use two strikers. So that didn't bode well for Campana. He probably only survived on the roster last season because of his special status in terms of how much money he was making and how he fit into the larger roster construction. Those rules that required that changed over the summer, and so that was no longer necessary. But I think even over the course of 2024, Campana once again proved himself to Tata Martino to the point that at the end, he was getting opportunities alongside Luis Suarez to help win games. So just before we go to what does this mean for the team, and I'll come back to you guys in a minute, what does this mean for Campana and his time at Inter Miami? He came in, was one of the first U22 initiative players when that program became official. Him and Emerson Rodriguez came in the same offseason. Obviously, Campana, much more impactful than Emerson Rodriguez ever was. But he finishes as one of Inter Miami's all-time biggest stat achievers. 100 appearances, that's third all time, just behind Drake Callender and Robert Taylor. This year he had 9 goals and 2 assists in 1,500 minutes, which is just about 1,500 minutes, which is a pretty decent, per minute basis, at least for his goal count. In his Inter Miami career, he finishes with 32 goals and 7 assists. There was a point this year where he became Inter Miami's all-time goal leader. Messi did take that from him by the end of the season. But again, when you look at the history books, it's going to be Higuain, it's going to be Campana, it's going to be Lionel Messi as the guys that led this club beyond the first couple games in terms of all-time goal-scoring leaders. I think Luis Morgan's probably on that list too, but at like 5 goals after the first season. Some of the biggest games, just best memories, I was kind of going through quickly. I didn't go through all of them, but he had that hat trick early in 2022 against New England at home. We won that game 3-2, and that was sort of like I'm here and I'm ready to be a boss. And while we never got another hat trick from him, I never lost that he can have this huge impact for this team. So from that point on, I really, really liked Leo Campana. 2023, he had a couple big penalties for us in the Leagues Cup to help us win that trophy. The U.S. Open Cup semifinal last year against Cincinnati on the road, we're down 2-0, and then Campana and Messi combined twice to help equalize that game. We sent it to extra time. We end up winning in extra time to get to the finals. That may be my favorite all-time Inter Miami game, and Campana was a huge part of that. 2 goals, both off of Messi, one coming in the 97th minute to equalize, to send it to overtime to give us a chance to win that game. Again, that might be my favorite ever moment as an Inter Miami fan. And then this year, game winners in stoppage time, both against DC United, a 1-0 winner for us, and then late in the season at Toronto, a 1-0 win for Inter Miami because Leo Campana was in the right place with the right finish. And neither of those were particularly easy finishes, especially that first one against DC United, up and over the keeper, but kept it below the crossbar for a banger of a goal to win it. And then also this Toronto goal had to kind of grab it, twist his body, and put it in the corner where the keeper couldn't get to it. Both of those goals helped Inter Miami break the points record and win the Supporters' Shield. I guess not win the Supporters' Shield, but to break the points record, which is the special thing that came out of the 2024 season. Right? We didn't win a lot of trophies, but we did win the Supporters' Shield, and we broke the points record. That's the biggest accomplishment of 2024, and that doesn't happen without a couple huge Leo Campana moments. So, again, some of my favorite moments as an Inter Miami fan coming from Leo Campana, and I don't want that to go underserved, even though he's clearly not Luis Suarez, and that's fine. Very few are. Still a player that provided me plenty of great moments. So let's get back to the chat. AZ says he doesn't feel too bad about it. Thomas says we robbed the New England Revolution for a lot of money. I don't know if we did. I think Campana is one of the most special type of players that's going to come onto the trade market into the MLS. He is under contract for several years. He is a very quality young player. He's a guy that starts on most teams in this league at the striker position. The striker position is one of the hardest positions to fill. He's not going to be a DP, even though he is a starter quality player and even a good starter quality player. And so $2.5 million, which is potentially one of the best hauls in league history. This is, I think, one of the best players that's getting traded in terms of not just his talent, but his contract situation. He's got his American residency, so he doesn't take up an international roster slot. He doesn't cost a tremendous amount. I think his on the books money is going to be like $1 million, which is not that much compared to, we're paying Julian Gressel 1.1. So it's a great deal, I think, for both teams, but especially the New England Revolution. This type of player doesn't come on the market a lot. There's probably a lot of competition to get this player from Inter Miami. And so I don't think that we robbed them. I think this was a very valuable player, and Inter Miami got a lot for him. AZ says very mixed. Hash says, I just really, really hope that this trade was not only done for Neymar. This shouldn't affect Neymar at all. Or Di Maria or Kevin De Bruyne or whoever, any superstar. He wasn't a DP by the end of the season. He was a DP because he fit a very specific type of designated player that allowed us to get all of our U22s that we needed. But they changed that rule in the summer. And from that point on, he was no longer considered a DP. So that is a misnomer that I just wanted to spell, because he is not preventing us from signing anyone special. Now, are we going to sign Neymar or whoever? Maybe, I don't know. But this isn't related to that. This is related to the fact that Inter Miami needs allocation money and they need international roster slots. And this is something that me and Sor have talked about a lot on this podcast is in order to build this type of roster that Inter Miami wants to build and that they built last year, they have to go way above the cap in terms of, player salaries, which requires a lot of allocation money. And they have to have a lot of foreign players because, that's their strategy, which means you need more international roster slots. Both of those things are what you have to go out and acquire. We saw them do this last year with Kamal Miller, a player that I think Inter Miami liked and I think fans really liked and wanted to keep on this team. But ultimately, you need the allocation money. You need the international roster slots. And the best way to do that is to trade players of value that are on your roster. And we'll get back to that in a second. Surely Miami has some big signings lined up if this is happening, right? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Campana was never consistent before he came to Miami. Before he came to Miami, he was with Wolves and he played for Grasshoppers in Switzerland. I don't know. I think he was just a young player that Inter Miami saw talent in. And I think if you didn't see the talent, the technical ability, the athleticism is good for that size, and he's got the strength. He can hit with both feet. I think you can see the talent, and so it's just a matter of consistency. And it's hard to be consistent if you're never given that clear run of games if you're a striker. So, to be honest, that was a lot of GAM. It is a lot of GAM. I just think that this is a really valuable player that a lot of teams would have been competing for, and so when there's a lot of buyers, you can run up the price. If Campana balls out for the New England Revolution, then it will be good for us. Not only would it be good for us, but there's actually incentives in there. So there can be further allocation money acquired by Inter Miami if they can, if Campana has a good season. For me, Joseph was better, says Vaishnav. I couldn't disagree more. I hated watching Joseph Martinez on this team, but that's just my personal opinion. Skrilla says we can upgrade the squad with all the GAM money, and we got a lot of salary cap too. We did. I think this takes us back to about where we were last season. I think I can probably find it, but last year I think we were sitting at just about 5 million, maybe just under 4.9 million in allocation money. And this is going to take us up over 5 million. This is going to give us a lot. So we're in a good spot. I think we're now probably sitting in the top 5 in the league in terms of allocation money, which they just published this morning or yesterday. So that'll be interesting. I'll have to look at that after. I don't have it available with me now. But Inter Miami has a lot of flexibility in terms of player salaries and how much they pay players because they can buy those down under the DB threshold. Cynical Tube says, not Campana. Again, I was a big fan of Campana, so you might find other people or other podcasts or other people on Twitter or whatever talking about how this is great for Miami. I think the haul that we got back proves that this is a really promising young player that teams really wanted and would have been really good for Inter Miami moving forward. Now the big question is who's going to be our backup striker next season, because Suarez is getting older, can't really play a full 90 minutes. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, so I'll get back to the chat in a few minutes, but like I mentioned, one of the reasons he was traded is because Inter Miami needs this allocation money. They need the international roster slots. It's not because they didn't think Campana was a good player. Every single coach has warmed up to Campana the more that they've played him. Phil Neville was that way. Tata Martino was that way. I'm sure Javier Mascherano would be the same way, even though Suarez is clearly the number one, rightfully so. Campana is the type of guy who I'm confident would be on this team and would originally be the backup and then continue to get more and more play, come off the bench almost every game, and be a guy that the coach really relies on for goals, especially if he needs goals, which feels like something that Javier Mascherano might want and need because he feels like a more defensive coach. Of course, that's yet to be seen, but just based on his record and his history, feels like that's what type of coach we should be expecting. So Campana's gone. This is the big trade that gets us a lot of allocation money. We're still going to need international roster slots. Who else might be on the way out? That's the big question. Julian Gressel, a guy that we have heard, we could definitely speculate being a guy that gets traded. He came because of Tata Martino. They had that long relationship. I mean, obviously he wanted to play with Messi and be a part of this winning team, but the Tata Martino relationship certainly helped. He is a good MLS player, and I'm sure there would be suitors for him. He reportedly took less money to come to Inter Miami, which means that if he was traded, some team would be getting a good deal. So that feels like a player that could be on the move. Robert Taylor did not figure into the end of the season in a particularly strong way, barely played in the postseason. That felt like part of his fit within this team, at least from inside the locker room. He's a guy that you could see being traded. And then Drake Callender is the other one that is a longtime starter, huge player for Inter Miami in terms of the history of this club. But we've heard a lot of reports lately about this guy, this Argentine from Lanús, Nahuel Losada. And if those three players are not going to fit prominently into your plans next season, trading them for further allocation money, further international roster slots feels like something this club should be pursuing. And that would make me sad because I really like Robert Taylor. I really like Drake Callender. I really like Julian Gressel. But some of these guys have a real special place in my Inter Miami fandom. But that, I think, is what's next on the table. Obviously, Javier Mascherano has not seen any of these guys up close and personal. They will get back to preseason in the next maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And so he'll get a chance to get a look at them. But the team has to make moves before then. One of the things I will add is looking back to last season, Inter Miami struggled to move some of the players they wanted off the roster in order to clear up what they needed. Nicholas Stefanelli, a guy that went later in the offseason. Chris McVeigh, a guy that went later in the offseason. Gregory, Coco Jean, DeAndre Yedlin, John Mota. These are guys that left the team very late into the offseason. And so maybe Inter Miami learned their lesson and wants to try and move these guys on earlier and not have to worry about that. I will say a lot of the players I just mentioned from last offseason were guys that didn't fit on the roster. You really wanted to move from a talent perspective. I think it's a little bit different this year. Robert Taylor, Drake Callender, these guys have proven that they can play for this team, even Campana. It's just a matter of, do you want them right away, or in terms of moving them on right away so that you can figure out what else you can do moving forward, or are these guys that you want to try and fit, but maybe won't be able to. Wookie says, how is he going to adjust to the Boston weather? Poor Campana. Yeah, I want to talk about that. That's probably how I'll end this chat. So the big question, who are we signing? Popular vote says it's some dude from Brazil. I'm assuming you're implying that that's Neymar. I don't know what that means with Campana because, again, we didn't need to move Campana in order to sign a player like Neymar or De Bruyne or anyone else. They have mentioned Miguel Borja has been linked to Inter Miami. He's a River Plate striker. I did want to mention him because he's the really only name we've heard from the striking position. It was only 1 or 2 links. It wasn't particularly strong links or reliable. So I actually don't think that's particularly likely. He's not a player I would say is a profile fit for Inter Miami. From a talent perspective, maybe, but from a roster construction perspective, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. I think Campana certainly fits better. It is going to be tough. You do need a second striker. I think you probably need a third striker. If you guys remember, we sold Schneider Borgelin earlier on in the season. So there's really nothing behind Luis Suarez at the moment. Ryan Carmichael, I wanted to mention, is a B team striker. He played a lot for the B team. They drafted him in the first round a year ago. But with the ambition and sort of way Inter Miami's operating, I don't think that's a guy they're going to rely on for big minutes, but he might be able to fill the Schneider Borgelin role from last season. Borgelin finished with 152 minutes and 6 appearances. So maybe he's going to be number 3. But you definitely need a number 2 striker because Suarez can't play 90 minutes. Suarez shouldn't be going 90 minutes. And I don't think anyone wants him to. And I think also, he might be getting more injury prone. He's not going to go on international duty. And we got the calendar today. There's no Inter Miami games during international duty. So that's nice. But at least other than the summer tournaments. you got to get a guy. And that leads us to what profile of player you want. I want to hear from you guys in the chat, and I'll get back to the chat now because that's the big question. Getting a number 2 striker feels like a huge priority now in a way that it didn't 2 hours ago. Can we sign Robinson of Cincinnati? He is a free agent. We could, but he's going to cost a lot. And I think you can get someone better, honestly. Miles Robinson is fine, but he's not a superstar, I don't think. They got a lot of money to buy a young striker, probably a young striker, says AZ and Thomas. I heard Miami are interested in Miguel Borja from River Plate. He could be a good signing. Yeah, I don't. That profile doesn't feel like it makes sense to me. And if that's who they go with or that type of player, that would really make me question this team's long-term ambition, because one of the things Campana could have been is the future, right? He's 24 now. If Suarez goes one more season, you're talking about turning the reins over to Campana, who's been a protege of some of the best strikers in the history of the world, right? And Luis Suarez and Higuain and in the league, and Joseph Martinez, now being ready to step into a major role. That's gone now. And so if you go out and get a 30-year-old, you're talking about him being a backup and on a short-term plan, whereas Campana could have then been the starter for the next 5 seasons. And so, again, if they get a 30-year-old, it would make me a little nervous about their long-term roster building, because this is a league where we've seen it. You can have a few older players and a few veterans that help you win games, but building through the youth is super important. Bringing in young U22 talents, bringing in players through the academy and playing through and through the super draft. That's how you build a really deep roster that can help you win tons of games, compete in plenty of tournaments. And that doesn't happen by bringing in expensive 30-year-old strikers that are going to be a backup. Skrilla says, Campana is not consistent enough to be the number 1 striker. I will say the advanced stats do not back this up. His per minute basis, like his stats on a per minute basis or a per 90 basis, are very good, much better than most of the starting strikers in this league. Again, I'm going to get back to Campana sort of at the end of this, but he's the type of player that, and his statistics show this, if you give him 3,000 minutes, he's going to be a 20-goal scorer. And it's not going to happen in Miami. So it is what it is. Is there a transfer fee cap in MLS? You're gonna have to explain to me what you mean by this. I'm not exactly sure. Raf says, good news. Could be. And listen, I'm saying a lot of great things about Campana. I'm saying that it could be bite us in the butt, but it could also be a great thing. We could sign the next superstar the Argentine striker that could be a superstar for Miami and could be all of these things and better than what Campana could have been. But until we know who that's going to be, it's tough to treat it that way. Now that Taran says, now that Campana is traded, I think Robert Taylor is up next. Certainly could be. Thomas says we can get more GAM money for Taylor and Drake. And also, and again, I don't want to exclude Julian Gressel from this conversation, because again, his connection with Tata Martino was, I think, a real reason why that bringing him in made sense. But without Tata Martino, he feels like a guy who can clear up a lot of cap requirements by moving him off the roster. And he was good when he played this year, especially from that right side of the field. But yeah, there's more. I think there's more trades coming, and I think this signals that Inter Miami is really going to overhaul the roster. Raf says, I bet Messi didn't even bat an eye. Okay. Skrilla says Gressel's making 1 million. Yeah, it's actually, I think it's 1.1. So yeah. Negrita, San Diego soon. Franco Negri. I'm going to come back to Franco Negri in a minute. Gabriella says, sad to see him go, but he deserves better. This is one thing I do want to talk about. Campana is a starting quality striker, and the only part of me that was interested in having conversation about him moving is so that he could get the opportunity to be a number 1, which obviously wasn't going to happen as long as Luis Suarez was here. So I'm really happy for him. I hope he balls out against every other team but Inter Miami, and I hope he has a really great future. Damien says, what does it mean to trade Campana? They have a lot of flexibility now. I also, just looking at the roster, they're down to 22 players. I think they're only at 13 senior team players. So they have a lot of holes to fill, but they have a lot of space to do it, and they have a lot of money to do it now. Facundo Farias is coming back, so that's one hole filled, right? Diego Gomez leaves, or maybe a better comparison would be to say Matias Rojas leaves. Facundo Farias kind of fills that role as a guy who can play as a winger on both sides, can play a little bit as a 10, maybe can play in a more dedicated midfield role. Not that we've seen that yet, but he's a flexible forward attacking midfielder that can play sort of all three of those spots. And he fills that Matias Rojas role well. He does come back. But other than that, they have to add players. And there's a lot of holes to fill. They need a number 2 striker. I think they need a left winger. Is that going to be Neymar or Di Maria or someone like that? Maybe. But even if it's not, I think they need to add a left winger because Robert Taylor feels like a guy that's going to get traded. And then if it's not him, you're relying on Facundo Farias to play every single game. You don't even have Matias Rojas anymore that can fill in there. And Farias is coming off of an ACL injury that he missed the whole season. So it doesn't feel like relying on him is actually a smart move. They're probably set in the midfield in terms of depth of numbers. Having Federico Redondo, Busquets, and Yannick Bright as your midfield 3, I think that's very strong. Then having Kramaski and David Ruiz, who are guys that can come off and replace them, that also feels pretty strong. So will they add a midfielder? I think they will. I think they should, but it doesn't feel like a glaring need. Left back, they have Jordi Alba and Noah Allen. Are they satisfied with that? Do they want to get another left back? I'm not sure. And then right back, you have Chelo Wiegand. You have Ian Frey, but I don't know how much you want to rely on him to be healthy. So do you need to add another right back? I don't know. We'll see. Center backs, they need 2. They move on Christoph. They move on Nico Frede, so they need to replace that. And then the goalkeeping situation. They have only one goalkeeper on the roster right now. That's Drake Callender. And he's a guy that feels like could be moved this offseason. And we've already talked about Noel Losada as a guy they've been linked to in a pretty significant way that would come in and be the starter. So adding 2 or 3 goalkeepers this offseason, also a priority. So that's a lot of work to do in terms of bringing players in. But now you get some money to actually do that with. Cynical says, who's actually available and likely? Your guess is as good as mine. I think when Tata was here, we could sort of look at the Argentine market, Paraguay, maybe Uruguay, teams that he coached in the past, the Mexican national team, Atlanta United. We could kind of map out where he might find players. I have no idea what to expect with Raul Sanyehi and Javier Mascherano because we haven't seen it from them yet. So maybe I should get to that now. This team is lacking in depth right now. Last season, they were incredibly deep. For an MLS team, I think it was the deepest team in the history of the league. They were too deep with very good, comfortable options almost everywhere. Maybe not at right back outside of when Ian Frey was healthy. But even when Ian Frey was healthy, you were good there. Maybe not a goalkeeper, I don't think. But actually, even when Ustari came, you felt good there. So they were too deep everywhere. They had plenty of center backs that were at least MLS quality. They had multiple left backs, a ton of midfielders, forwards across the line. That is gone. A lot of that is gone. You lost your backup left back, who's a quality left back in Franco Negri. Obviously, Campana now is your quality backup striker. He's gone. Your goalkeeper, Ustari and Dos Santos, gone. Rojas, a guy who could fill in at right winger or in the midfield, he's gone. Christoph and Frede, gone. And then Diego Gomez, who is a starter, but also adds to the depth issue. That second lineup that was so strong last year or in 2024, it's almost completely depleted. And if this team does go ahead and trade Robert Taylor and Julian Gressel, it's going to be depleted even further. Is this front office ready to replace them in a way that is compatible with how this team was built last year? If they go out and they sign an overpriced backup striker, a couple center backs, and then Neymar, I think a lot of people, will be excited because there's a lot of big names there, but the depth will not be as strong. And I think there's a very real possibility that's what Inter Miami is looking at next season. Because a lot of these high quality options that were second stringers, but weren't on particularly expensive deals, particularly Franco Negri, particularly Campana, particularly Robert Taylor, those feel like guys, Taylor will see, that maybe aren't going to be around next year. Taran says a young striker who is direct and fast is what he wants. Hash says, I don't think we should trust any rumors until reliable sources come out and say it is true. I agree with this. The only player that I feel like is real so far is this goalkeeper, Noel Losada. But in a transfer like this, anything can fall apart. The clubs might not agree on a fee. So even that can fall apart. But most of the other names I've heard, I think you should take with a grain of salt. Any chance we play 2 strikers next season? Your guess is as good as mine. Javier Mascherano is a new coach. He's never coached at the club level. His entire experience is with a single player pool with the Argentine national team, I guess, split over the Olympics and the U20s. But to my knowledge, that's not how he's played so far. But you would imagine as a young coach who he'll have to be adaptable. He doesn't feel like the kind of guy that's going to be a system coach. But we'll see. I think with Messi on the field, that it's a little difficult, but that's not impossible. Hash says, let's not jump the gun and let's wait and see how things go. 100%. The offseason is still young, and we can definitely be won over. Gressel's being traded to Dry Ping next season. We'd love to have him on the show, but his podcast is on hold for right now. Francisco says Borja is better than Cucho Hernandez. If Miguel Borja is better than Cucho Hernandez, that would be awesome. But then he also doesn't fit Inter Miami's roster because he would be incredibly expensive and a guy that isn't going to be a number 1 starter. That's the thing. Any 30-year-old is going to either want to be a starter, or he's going to be a backup that understands his role is to be behind Luis Suarez. You can get away with that if you're a 22-year-old or a 19-year-old because learning from Luis Suarez is a great opportunity. But as a 30-year-old, you want to either play, you want to maximize what you can be. And that means financially, and that means playing time. So if that's really the case, then it makes even less sense to me. Granted, I haven't seen Borja play a ton, so maybe he just really wants to play with Messi before he retires. I don't know. Sorab says, I'm devastated. We no longer have the best backup striker in the league. True. What's Soar's opinion regarding Campana's trade? I will read our text. Oh, well, he used inappropriate language. And then he said, did I get bingo yet? When do we play New England? I bet Campapi scores against us. We play New England. I think we play them at the very end of the season to close out. It's the second to last game. But we play them for the first time on July 9th. That's going to be in New England. Can Neymar be a free agent in January or in the summer? He's under contract, as far as I know, until next summer, so he could leave as a free agent. But there has been some rumors that his current team, Al Hilal, might be willing to just release him because it hasn't worked out like they wanted or like he wanted. So we'll see. If that happens, it could happen in January. Depends, but Neymar said he wants to play in the Club World Cup with Hilal, from what I've heard. So, all of these things, take them with a grain of salt. We'll find out. I think we might get more clarification on the Neymar stuff in the next couple of weeks once the January transfer window opens. If he stays with Al Hilal beyond that, then he's going to stay with them till the summer. Sir Octi says, so we need at least 6 signings in about a month. Should be fun. That is the positive way to look at it. We're going to have to go get a goalkeeper, probably 2. We're going to have to get a couple defenders. We're going to probably get a midfielder, a left winger, and a striker. So, yeah, 6 or 7, really. And this is really going to put the test to Javier Mascherano and to Raul Sanllehi. Can they do it? I think, personally, I built a lot of trust in Tata Martino and Chris Henderson to fill this roster in a quality way. Every single time they signed someone, I felt, after the first summer, after we saw what Aviles and Diego Gomez were, I felt very comfortable with that guy that they're bringing in is going to be a good player and is going to fit this roster well. And I think that proved to be the case in almost every situation, as long as that player stayed healthy. That doesn't exist with this new staff. Right? Chris Henderson is gone. Tata Martino is gone. Javier Mascherano has never signed a single player his entire coaching career. Right? He's never been at a club. He's never signed a player. Raul Sanllehi doesn't have the best reputation from his time at Arsenal in terms of how he went about acquiring players. I know that he has a great story with Neymar from 12 years ago, but that's not how things are done in the MLS. So how can he adjust? And also, a lot of the players and the agents that he had relationships with are going to be guys that aren't within Inter Miami's realm of possible gets, right? Damien says, did we get the Campana trade 2 international roster slots? We got 1 in 2025 and 1 in 2026. So we got 1 for the next 2 seasons. Damien wants Virgil. A says, would be nice to get Almada from Botafogo, but Europe is his goal. It would be nice, right? I think the plan for Thiago Almada was to go to Botafogo for this season and then go to the French club. I think it's Lyon. But that club is now under sanctions and might get relegated. So maybe that's not going to be a thing this season. So who knows? Maybe their relationship with Mascherano. I mean, that would be a dream signing, I think, for Inter Miami. Very difficult to pull off. One of the things I did say at the beginning of the offseason is I wouldn't be surprised if Inter Miami makes their club record signing. The current club record signing is Rodolfo Pizarro was about 12.5 million. So it wouldn't shock me if we went out and bought someone that was even more expensive than that. But just my opinion. LB Gote says Taylor will be gone along with Drake. I feel like that makes a lot of sense. Thomas says Borja fits perfectly into the squad. Tell me how in the chat. I'm happy to, I would love to hear your opinion. Rossell says Taylor and Drake may be the next departures. Yeah, to me, the 3 guys I have my eyes on are Julian Gressel, Robert Taylor, and Drake Callender. I like all 3 of those players, and I think getting rid of them you have to replace them, and I think it's going to be really hard to replace them with someone better. TRA says, feels really bad to lose Campapi. I agree. Damien says Taylor might go to Charlotte. We will see. Yeah, a couple former Inter Miami players at San Diego right now that Franco Negri is joining. Obviously, Cesar Santos got traded there, and Chris McVeigh also got traded there a couple days ago. So I want to hear from you guys in the chat. Raul Sanyehi, Javier Mascherano. Again, I was just talking about this, but do you trust them? Are these guys that you feel like are going to make the right decisions to bring in the right players? And are they going to be able to do it within the rules that exist in MLS so that they can maximize what they're trying to build in 2025? Beyond that, is maxing out what Inter Miami can be in 2025 worth sacrificing what they could be in the future? One of the things that Chris Henderson did so well was building flexibility in this roster. And that's why there's so much flexibility right now, because they could move on guys. They didn't give guys 3 and 4 year deals in order to come. They gave them 1 year deals with options. And the team used those options to create flexibility. So you're not stuck with long-term contracts. Are new coaches going to come in? I'm sorry. Is Sanyehi and Mascherano going to come in, give a bunch of long-term contracts that maximize what this team could be in 2025, but could hurt this team moving forward? And does that matter, right? Messi going to probably be on the team through 2026. Is he going to be a guy that doesn't care about 2027? Is it all about building towards 2025 and 6 and maximizing how many trophies we win? I'm not saying that's the wrong answer. I'm not saying that's the wrong decision. I'm just curious how this is going to play out. Because again, Campana could have been the heir apparent at striker, and now he's not. Who is going to be that guy? I guess we'll find out. That is the next thing I wanted to talk about, by the way. The Real Keno says, I can see more Argentinians coming to Miami. Yeah, and this is a roster that's filled with Argentines right now. There's 5 or 6 guys on this team that are Argentine, and it doesn't feel like that number is going to go down anytime soon. Hash says, I do trust those guys, the freedom to dream. That would be awesome. I don't trust them. That's why we lost Henderson. Fair counterpoint. Taran says, no, I see more sanctions coming to Miami. Chris Henderson is the only sporting director in Inter Miami history to not get us in trouble with sanctions. So worth noting. Thomas says, I trust them to bring players because a lot of them want to play with Messi, and young players want to be the next Gomez. This is, I guess, my point about trusting them, though, is it is very attractive to come to Inter Miami right now because you get to play with Lionel Messi. But can the club structure the deal in a way that makes sense for the club? It's not about just getting them to agree to come. It's about getting them to agree to come at the right contract terms that allows you to build the best possible roster. Excuse me 1 second. Going by yourself is always a little more difficult when you have to cough. So listen, I'm not saying they can't do it. There's still going to be other people on staff that their main job is to make sure this team is maximizing what it can be from a MLS roster rules perspective. So I'm not doubting that they can do it. I'm just saying we haven't seen it from them. And these are people that are new to the MLS and they've never done it before. So there's really nothing for us to go on in terms of trust to make us feel like they know what they're doing. In terms of this specifics of managing an MLS roster and navigating the roster rules and all of that stuff. Albigote says, let's talk about how much GAM we got to throw down now. We have a lot. And maybe I should mention this because I saw that someone asked this on Twitter. The best use of allocation money is to give players contracts that would make them DPs, which is going to be about $700,000 per year. And then you buy down everything that's above the 700,000 so that they don't count as a DP. And this allows you to pay players more than the 700,000 without taking up one of the DP spots. That's in essence what it does. It means that a guy like Jordi Alba is making over 700,000. He's making $1.5 million. Inter Miami needs 800,000 worth of allocation money to buy him under that 700,000 mark and makes him not a DP. It's that type of player that, or it's that type of funny money that allows Inter Miami to get higher quality players, even if it doesn't change how much overall money they can spend, although it does a little bit. AZ says unlimited budget. Listen, here's the thing. If they trade Robert Taylor and Drake Callender and Julian Gressel, they're going to have a ton of money. I will also add, they could have done the same thing with Franco Negri and Matias Rojas. Both of those players could have been signed to an extension and then traded, not signed to an extension, but just have their options accepted, been on the roster, and then traded for allocation money and international roster slots if there was a team out there willing to do it. And certainly there would have been in Matias Rojas's case. So they're going to have plenty of money. They're going to have room to bring in players. It's just a matter of who they want to bring in. The real Akeno says Di Maria, Dybala, and Otamendi, I think, are Mascherano's targets. It's going to be really hard to bring all three of those guys in. They're going to have to take huge pay cuts. One of them can take a big money deal, but the rest of them will have to take the Jordi Alba, Luis Suarez pay cut. And I think that's been one of the reasons we haven't seen Di Maria want to come to Inter Miami so far, is because he can make significantly more money elsewhere. El Bigote says Moss was warning us ahead of time when he said that in those press conferences. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Rossell says, I don't think Julian Gressel fits into the system that Mascherano wants to play. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Julian Gressel goes. Hendo is not the only person who can manipulate money when they got other people working too. True. And listen, Sanyehi might be a math genius and he might just have a natural instinct for this. But Chris Anderson has proven over the last 15 years that he's really good at this. Alejandro is sad about Campana. Hopefully we get De Bruyne. I think De Bruyne would be awesome. Di Maria and Dybala are not realistic right now, but I would love Otamendi here, says Sir Akti. And what about De Bruyne for the U.S. for us in the summer? Again, I think De Bruyne would be awesome. I think he's a stud. By the way, guys, can you do me a favor and hit the like button? It really helps the channel out. And I'd love to rub it in Soar's face that my solo videos get more than his. Just kidding, of course, if you're watching Soar. Okay, so the last thing I guess I want to talk about is Campana. I have said this for the last 2 seasons, but I think he's a stud for this league. I think he's got so much talent, and it's just a matter of opportunity. And Inter Miami has always surrounded him with a really high-quality striker that's going to eat into his minutes in a significant way, and deservedly so. Right? Gonzalo Higuain is a great player, or was a great player. Luis Suarez, one of the best of all time. Jose Martinez certainly earned his flowers in this league. But I think Campana is going to go to the New England Revolution and score 20 goals in one of the next 2 seasons, assuming he can stay healthy, which he did over the course of 2024. He's the type of guy that can score 3 goals in a game. He's the type of guy that can come off the bench and be impactful when he's getting a rest day, but that when he starts, he's going to be a focal point for that team. Carlos Gil is a guy for them. He's sort of their best player, but he's getting a little bit older. I think he's 31, 32. sort of an attacking midfielder. I think having a striker for him to work off of might revitalize him a little bit heading into next season. He just turned 32 about a month ago. They added a midfielder named Hassan Yusuf in the summer. Really like him. He's a great athlete. And then I think they signed Jackson Ewell a couple days ago, who is another MLS quality midfielder. So they've really reshaped their midfield room. They've definitely reshaped their attack now that they brought in Campana. I believe they brought in a U22 in the summer as well to play on the wings. So big gift for New England. They paid a lot for him, but I think this is a guy that can be a phenomenal player in this league. And I'm going to get a little teary-eyed when I see him playing in another uniform, because he was one of my favorites. Again, some of my favorite moments as an Inter Miami fan, especially that U.S. Open Cup semifinal against Cincinnati on the road, down 2 goals, Messi, Campana, 97th minute to tie the game up. One of the great moments, I think, in Inter Miami's history. Just want to run through everything again. His career, what Inter Miami got, just a reminder, $2.5 million in GAM split over 2025 and 2026, $2 million in 2025, $500,000 in 2026, up to $750,000 in potential further allocation money based on performances from Campana. We keep a sell-on fee if they end up selling him. And then international roster slot for both 2025 and 2026. Who's going to be the next striker? I would love to see us use a U22 spot on a striker. But I don't know if that's really the team's plans. We'll see. I don't know if there's a young Argentine that really fits that mold either, but I don't know the pool as well as Javier Mascherano, of course. And then what does Inter Miami do post Luis Suarez? That's going to be a big question, and I wonder if we're going to get an answer to that this offseason, because to me, that's a really fascinating question, and we have no idea right now. Abigote says it was in reference to his unlimited budget comment. He said in the Tata release in Mascherano conferences. Yeah, that's related to sort of real money, though, not allocation money. And they're going to be limited in terms of how much money they can spend in terms of real money, because they only have one DP spot open. And so you can go out and spend 15, 20 million on a player, but you can only do it once because of the salaries of Busquets and Messi, and that would be your third DP. So they can go out and spend $1-2 million on a player and bring him in and have him be under the cap. But, they can't just go spend $50 million on 6 players. Alejandro says he's going to be a starter for sure in Miami. He was always at the bench. If that's about Campana, it's about New England. And I agree. I think he's going to be New England's best player next year. I really do. New England Revolution's coach is Caleb Porter, who won an MLS Cup with the Columbus Crew, I think in 2021, maybe 2020. And they just hired him last offseason to rebuild that franchise after the problems with Bruce Arena. And that roster was really depleted at the end of the 2023 season. They were reshaping it under Caleb Porter, and I think they've made some good moves since the summer, and including over the last couple of weeks. And that's Damien's question. Alejandro says, Campapi, we call him. Russell says, the MLS draft is tomorrow. Yeah, for anyone wondering, the MLS draft is tomorrow at 2 p.m. It's not being televised, so I don't know. Inter Miami has the 22nd overall pick in all 3 rounds and no other draft picks. I'm expecting them to take a goalkeeper. I was talking with a college soccer expert today, and I was asking about some of the goalkeepers that might get there. And I'll just pull it up and read some of the names, because I think there's some players to root for if you're watching that on a pick by pick basis. Trace Alfin from Wake Forest, I think, is the guy that could really fall and would be really good for Miami. He's a guy that I think a lot of people think is ready to be a number 2 in the MLS. So that would be a cool pick. Eric DeMora, Lucas Burns, Joey Batruani, and Mitch Budler, Sebastian Conlon. A couple other goalkeeping names that would be interesting for Inter Miami from the college soccer expert. I don't know anything about college soccer, so I rely on the experts. Anyways, guys, like I said, Soar is sick. We were going to do an episode tonight about the schedule release, which also happened today. but that was postponed because Soar is too sick to do it, can't talk, and we need him to get better. So we're hoping to be back tomorrow to talk about the schedule release, talk about the allocation money release, which MLS did for the first time ever yesterday or today, which was really cool. And then the super draft is tomorrow at 2 p.m. So we'll talk about whoever Inter Miami drafts and get a little bit of a sense of who that is. So hopefully we'll be back tomorrow, both Soar and I, and that's the plan. Guys, again, do me a favor, hit the like button. I really appreciate it. I needed to talk about Campana with you guys because it's always great therapy, and I love to hear what you guys think because you guys are make being an Inter Miami fan special, and I really do appreciate that. And also, Campana is one of my favorite players, and seeing him go was tough. So I needed a little, to talk it out a little bit. So I appreciate you guys being here. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow. But until then, see you next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.